You're watching Act Now. I'm Julianna Forlano. Coming up next, we have an interview with the president of the Association of Flight Attendants-CWA there, Sara Nelson. She's here to talk with us about the miners' strike and what does it take to financially run a strike like this, and why are the flight attendants helping the miners, and how all of that works. In addition, she's going to give a comment on Biden and his policies on labor and where we are at with the labor movement right now. Here she is, Sara Nelson. Sara, thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
I'm always happy to be here.
Well, there's a lot going on. Can you talk about what is happening in Alabama?
So the mine workers have been on strike since April 1st against Warrior Met. This is a company that mines coal, metallurgical coal, for the production of steel. And these mine workers have been on the job for the last 5 years working under a bankruptcy contract. So their contract was, torn to shreds through the bankruptcy court process, which means that they're not really making a living wage. They have forced overtime, no control over their schedules. The access to affordable health care when you're not making enough is very, right. Very difficult. And they're fighting, they're essentially fighting a new system in this country where we are allowing Wall Street and hedge funds to control all of our business. And so they're on strike for issues that almost any worker in this country can relate to. And when you are forcing people to come to work that much, I talked to some miners down in Alabama who only had 4 days off last year. We're talking about people who go underground, don't see the daylight, don't see their kids, no control of their own lives. I mean, this sounds like stuff that that was the reason that the United Mine Workers of America was even formed over 100 years ago. So these are fundamental workers' rights issues that these miners are striking for, and the entire country needs to get in on this strike.
Absolutely. Talk about, so I understand that the Association of Flight Attendants gave about $10,000 to, or is it right? $10,000 to the miners' effort. What does it take financially to run a strike like this?
Yeah, so to have 1,000 people or 2,000 people out on strike for months and months is a real financial commitment by the union, because what you have to do is you have to make sure that people can withstand being out of work, not getting a paycheck. You're taking on the boss who has all the control, right? And all the money. And you're asking workers not to go to work, but they still have to make sure that their families are safe. They still have to make sure that they can survive. They still have to make sure that they can eat. So basic medical coverage, the UNWA is covering that for these strikers, and providing strike benefits actually that are higher than almost anywhere else. And that's allowing people with some level of assistance to be able to manage this strike. But the reality is that it's always tough when you are out on strike and you're out there with the threat of replacement workers, scabs, and a company that doesn't care and really just wants to break the union.
How many, not knowing how many people work at that coal mine, how big of a percentage of the workforce is 1,000 to 2,000 coal miners?
So this is, let's see, this is about 5% of the union that we're talking about, and that's a lot. But what this is really a moral fight, because Warrior Met is being controlled by big hedge funds like BlackRock, where many unions out in New York were protesting just yesterday out in front of BlackRock's offices.
Yes,
and including our members, the AFA members were there, because this is the same story. This isn't just about coal mines. This is about working people's rights in this country and the ability to actually get some of the value back that you are creating as a worker. That's what this fight is about. And it's also about recognizing the value of production. Workers are out there producing things that we all use that then are resources that are valuable to our country overall, right? And what does Wall Street give us other than a false view about how our economy is doing, right? And so as more and more control goes to Wall Street, this is getting worse and worse for workers, and all the productivity that workers have given to this country, the most productive workers in the world, our wages have remained flat, and all of that extra work has gone into the pockets of Wall Street or the corporate elite.
Can you talk about unionization in general? Are you seeing an uptick in mobilization toward unionizing overall, given that it does seem like people are waking up to the fact that it really is the workers versus the hedge fund managers?
Yeah, I mean, so people... Look, all of the surveys show that a super majority of Americans want to join a union. But why is it then that less than 10% of American workers are actually in a union? Well, it's because the laws are completely stacked against the ability for working people to claim their rights as working people. And the only way that you can claim those rights is if you organize in your workplace, that you can actually get to an election or a recognition by the company, which happens very, very little number of times. But getting to that election is very, very hard. And then the election process, everything is stacked against the workers, because even where there are penalties or laws that say that companies can't do certain things, the consequences are essentially a slap on the hand. And so most companies like an Amazon, you can withstand that. You can withstand the public pressure. You can withstand any kind of enforcement that the government may place on the company, because it is a drop in the bucket compared to the profits that they make off of these workers' backs. And they will use every kind of tactic to get workers not to support the union. And the biggest tactic that they use is saying that if you support the union, you're against the company. And so that clearly means that you don't want the company here. So if you vote for the union, we're just going to move the factory or the warehouse to another state or another city.
They can't move the coal mine. That's the one thing.
They can't move the coal mine. They can't move the coal mine. But what the company can do is create, 35, 50 entrances to the mine and try to sneak the scabs in and try to withstand the strike. I'll tell you though, when I was in Alabama, I was very happy to be driving up towards the mines and see the trains sitting there on the track, dead stopped, not full of coal, but sitting there stopped because of the strike. But because it's Wall Street controlling this company, and they're so dead set against unions and retaining all the control, because this is really about control, right? They are helping Warrior Met take on this strike and take on the strikers and try to outlast them. There's no way Warrior Met's going to win. I've seen these strikers. They are committed. They're committed to each other, and they're committed to taking on this company. I mean, enough is enough. And when they are also mowing down the picketers outside of the mines, I mean, there's been physical interactions, actual cars running into the strikers. And what does that do? That just makes everyone more committed to beating these bastards, And
it unfortunately for the company gives you a nice news. I saw some newsreel footage. I think we played it earlier. We definitely played it last week in the show of people getting run over on a picket line, which certainly helps, I would imagine, the picketers.
Look, I just want to say this one thing. I didn't really learn about the labor movement until I was a part of it. And so I grew up in a working class family, but we didn't talk about unions. And I remember the first time that I watched Harlan County, about the strike in Harlan County in 1973. And I remember the opening scenes of the little girl in the wash tub on the table saying, I wish I could have a hot bath, Mommy. And she says, we just have to help your daddy win the strike, and then you can have hot water. And that little girl was my age. And this is again what these strikers are striking for. They're striking for their children. They're striking for basic human rights and conditions that we should expect for our labor. And it's really easy to stand with them because they're really fighting for all of us.
It seems really disgusting that the company doesn't even want to just give them what they already had before the workers so generously said, okay, we'll give you these things because we know you're in bankruptcy. It just to go back to what was expected before this bankruptcy happened. They're not even asking for more than what they were already given before.
Yeah, the bankruptcies are really an excuse to reset the terms of the labor agreements or to break them. And the managers always find a way to get bonuses and executive compensation. I remember in our 38-month-long bankruptcy with United Airlines, at the end of that bankruptcy, when we were still fighting to save our pensions, the managers were awarded with $400 million in executive bonuses. And the bankruptcy attorneys submitted a bill for $25 million for their lunches during the course of the bankruptcy. $80 million would have saved our pensions, but the court approved terminating our pensions and at the same time approved those $400 million in bonuses for the executives. So, if we allow them to, they're always going to just look at us as a line item, not as people who deserve respect and a return for the value of our work. So this is really about giving them a beating. And I always say that in my experience as a labor leader, we either have to beat it out of them or they have to remember the beating they're going to take in order to deal with us fairly, because they have to understand the risks for not treating workers fairly in order to do the right thing.
Sara, could you quickly comment on the inability of the Amazon workers also in Alabama to be able to form a union?
Yeah, so so first of all, those Amazon workers organized very quickly. They were really committed. It was a brand new warehouse, actually, but they had some real gripes and they had a real reason to organize. And what was the first thing the company did? Well, they had the ability to go out and say that they were going to hire 2,000 more people. So they padded the list with people that they had just hired. That was the first thing they did. So those workers were up against unlimited amounts of money to work against them. And then I went to see the warehouse during the vote. And even though the labor board had told them that they could not have on-site voting, the company went and got a mailbox that looked like they got it from USPS and
they
put it
ordered
up right on company property. Yep. And they put it on company property right in front of the front door with a big tent around it saying vote here, a complete violation of labor law, right? And of the direct instructions from the government right before this vote. But they got away with it, and it sat there. And then what they did all the things that companies do. They had captive audience meetings where they stop production. They don't stop production for anything except for an anti-union meeting. And then after they got done with those, they brought in more supervisors and paid union busters at the tune of $3,500 a day. Brought scores of them in to just focus on beating the union, not on making Amazon a better company or making that workplace a better company or listening to the workers. There were things that they could have done in the workplace to make things better for those workers that actually would have made the workers say, maybe we don't need a union because the company's listening to us, which is also a tactic sometimes that companies will use. But they didn't do that. It was all about just beating the union and doing everything they could to make people scared to vote for the union, to say, with cameras trained on that tent outside of the warehouse, to call people up and say, hey, Joseph, we haven't seen you vote yet. So when you come to work tomorrow, make sure you bring your ballot and vote. That's what those workers were up against at the Amazon site. Wow. Unlimited amounts of money, unlimited amounts of control, and no check and no accountability from anyone.
Do you think their struggle will continue? Will they continue to try to organize in some way?
100%, because again, management looks at those workers as a line item, and there are plenty of issues to organize around in the workplace anytime. Even at good companies, there's issues to organize around in the workplace. But when you think of people as disposable, and you treat them as disposable and you treat them simply as a cost line item in the company, that will ultimately lead to people saying, enough is enough, and we're going to band together and stop this. And listen, I mean, some of the things that we have to do as a labor movement is really put the demands out there for what labor law should be, like with the PRO Act, and help people understand that the deck is stacked against us. And what that really does is it helps people understand that the reason that I don't have a union, the reason I don't have a say, and the reason that that I don't have a contract when my management does, is because the laws are stacked against me. And so these are important, and it's important that we fight for this, just like fighting for any other social right.
Sara Nelson, president of the Association of Flight Attendants Union. Final thoughts here on what President Biden can and should do with his ostensibly pro-union stance that he has been talking about in order to support both the formation of unions, the strengthening of the unions that are already there, and anything else he can do to help organize labor?
Well, look, I mean, President Biden has done a good job of making labor central to this administration. And I would say that one of the things that is the most helpful that he did was help other Democrats understand that they can't just have labor as an applause line, but he's got this task force that he's put the vice president in charge of and is making it a cabinet level task force. And every single Democrat in his administration is having to face the fact that they have to put labor central to what they're doing. And I'll tell you, a lot of them don't understand it, but I do appreciate the fact that he's making them have to go through that exercise, have to listen to this, have to be able to make labor more central to the work that every agency and department is completing. And so there's a lot more work to do here. Like, we've got to pass the PRO Act in the legislation that's got to be attached, for example, to the reconciliation bill, so that we improve this. We're not going to get everything that's in the PRO Act, because through reconciliation, there will just be some things that we can't get through. But if we can even get half of what's in the PRO Act, it's going to improve the position of working people to be able to organize. And as we organize more and as we raise expectations more, that will naturally lead to more organizing and more unions and more setting the economy to the workers and not so much to the corporate elite.
Sara Nelson, president of the Association of Flight Attendants, thank you so much for being on our show, and thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone, for watching. This has been Act Now. I'm Julianna Forlano. We are asking you to please share our content. Leave us a comment. We'd like to hear the kind of things you'd like to see covered in terms of progressive activism, the kind of things we cover on this program. Thanks for watching. We will see you next week when we are covering Medicare for All. There was a rally this week. We're going to talk about that next week. And we're also going to be covering some environmental action that's going on. Thanks so much for watching. See you then.